You are listening to the Centropic Oracle, an audiobook podcast of science fiction and fantasy short stories that make you think and feel. Chaser by Charlotte H. Lee. Kara thumbed off the launcher's safety, wishing she could as easily shut down the monster-sized butterflies bouncing around in her belly. Though not her first time in the field, it was her first time leading a team she'd built herself. It was also her first time firing live chill mines in the field. She'd done it countless times in the wind generator, but this was different. The guy who'd invigilated her practical exam had given her a perfect score, adding a written comment that she'd clearly had plenty of field experience. That was true. Her father had been taking her out in the field since her 16th birthday. Up until 8 months ago, she'd been his go-to support, filling whatever slot needed filling most. Experienced storm chasers were almost as rare as unicorns, he'd said. She believed him now. One of her field team had only 1 tornado kill, 2 others only 3. And then there was Uncle Steve. Her honorary uncle had maybe half the encounters she'd had, despite working the job for 10 years longer. "Calgary Control confirms us good for go," Julia shouted from the front passenger seat, radio mic in hand. "The kill is ours." Kara swallowed, wishing her nervousness was edged with excitement. She should be exultant from being awarded the kill. Her share of the prize money would pay off all the equipment loans Dad had left behind. Instead, she felt only anticipatory dread. Miss this first kill, and it would be tough as hell to win a shot at the next one. If she botched this, she would kick everyone out of the van and make a beeline for the heart of another cyclone. Screw the damned insurance company, and the bank. They'd get nothing more from her or from what was left of her family. "I make it 1.4 kilometers to the edge of the debris cloud," Devender called from the radar station. "It's a big one, Kara. Timing your shield drop is going to be tough." Kara nodded. Her powered body armor would protect her from the little stuff, but it wouldn't keep her from getting swept away by a loose roof or a horse trailer the way the anti-gravity shielding would. She flicked a glance at Uncle Steve, grateful to have him along on her first hunt. He tapped the 360 monitor perched on his head with a scarred forefinger and gave her a saucy wink. Dad had trusted him with his life dozens of times, and hadn't had time to realize the mistake he'd made in not having Steve on the road with him on that horrible day. Kara would never, never run a shield again. "Drop me 400 meters from the edge of the debris cloud, then clear the hell out," Kara said, snapping her visor down and spinning up the grav shield's motor. She'd watched Gavin load the launcher feed as carefully as he was now threading the van through the destruction of the storm's vicinity. She knew it was a good load. Her heads-up display scrolled through the startup checklist, the distance to the 85-meter funnel, and its accompanying 600-meter debris cloud racing downward. She nodded to Steve to take control of the shield once it hit full charge, drawing some comfort from knowing he'd be running it for her. Then came the moment they'd all been waiting for. Randy threw open the van door, and Kara was out, clomping at top speed for one of the nastiest tornadoes she'd ever seen. The towering storm cell pressed down from the heavens, crushing daylight into false twilight. Debris stretched across her entire field of vision, obscuring everything in a dirty haze and rendering invisible the funnel cloud she knew must be at its heart. She wouldn't know the final numbers until all the buoy data was in, but the wind speed her suit registered said the kill should be a $10 million payout, minimum. It was a bargain for the insurance consortium that would pay out billions in claims if it weren't for idiots like her. Prize money on an EF5-rated storm like this was what every chaser dreamed of, so there were plenty of idiots to choose from. The Twister's roar, muffled by the suit's noise dampeners, was a vicious growl that urged her adrenaline higher. The anti-grav shield just beyond her reach did its job, vaporizing the little bits of flotsam and deflecting the larger chunks. A concrete block bounced off to her right, the shield barely rippling in response to the impact just as visibility soured down to nil. A double pause, single pause, triple blink brought down the visor's cover, and she made the mental switch to running in the dark, trusting Devinder to guide her out of the path of anything big enough to crush her. Despite the countless hours she'd spent training in the suit, she was starting to tire, her thighs burning with the effort of pushing against 500 kph winds. The moan of the mechanical assist servos pitched up another notch as they went into overdrive. Her forward momentum slowed, so she strained harder. Her universe constricted to the deep-throated storm howl beneath the pounding of her pulse, the pinging of the shield, whining of stressed motors, and the steadily decreasing distance to the designated firing position glaring red above her right eye. "Back off on the gas, boss," Randy said, startling her. "Your heart rate is climbing above 120, and we need you steady when you get there." Kara complied, though she wasn't sure that slowing down would slow her pulse any. It was just her out here, the mine launcher mounted on her powered suit's right shoulder, and the hopes of her team riding on her left. She chopped off that train of thought. She didn't want to think about who else's hopes and nightmares were pinned on her. Kara trudged on for what felt like hours, though only minutes had passed according to her HUD. 10 steps. 5. She couldn't guess how many times she'd pictured this moment, how many times she'd tried to guess what she would feel. In none of those scenarios had she pictured the seething, frothing rage that roared up to wrap around her core, suffocating the little girl who wanted her daddy to come home from work just one more time, deafening her to the sound of nature's wrath a bare meter away. She railed against God for creating things like tornadoes, and corporate oligarchs who didn't care that global warming made monsters like this possible. Even here, where only 50 years ago EF1 storms had caused endless discussion and gasps of surprise. Her hands rattled in the suit gloves, desperate to wrap themselves around the neck of the insurance adjuster who'd refused to pay out death benefits because she'd been operating her father's shield. Family members weren't allowed to, licensed or not. "Boss, you're clear to fire. Repeat, clear to fire." Uncle Steve's voice carried a note of buried fear, and it brought her back to herself. Kara swallowed that rage, letting the blurred edges of her vision block out everything but the ever-shifting crosshairs surrounding the funnel. She squinted, lined up the first shot, sucked in a breath, and fired the first mine. It hit the ground and tethered itself as intended, but she didn't notice. She was already on the third shot. In less than 15 seconds, she'd laid all 10 mines, pivoting on her heel as her shield shimmered back into place. 30 seconds later, she was out of the kill zone, the shriek of the mine's intakes easing with every step. Randy streamed a vid feed to her HUD of the mines in action, sucking in the warm ground air, condensing and freezing the CO2, then blasting it out in focused streams around the funnel. She should have felt satisfaction when the wind's roar faded beyond her hearing, and the frenzied sparkling of her bombarded shield smoothed away to almost nothing. Kara tuned out the whooping and hollering coming in over her speaker. The prize money would make them happy, might even hook them into the chase for the rest of their lives. Maybe they'd become like Dad, searching for that next EF5 payoff until it killed them. Not her, though. She was done. She didn't even look up and shake a fist at the sky in victory. We hope you enjoyed Chaser by Charlotte H. Lee, read by Larissa Thompson. If you'd like to learn more about the author and narrator of this story, or make a donation to them, follow the story page link in the description. Pledge your support to us on Patreon for cool rewards and to help us bring you more stories. If you would like to submit a story for consideration or apply to be a narrator, a link to our submission guidelines is in the description.